Salve, and welcome to Acroasis XLVI, or video 46. Today we're going to be talking about the interrogative pronoun and adjective, which is how we say who, which, whose, or what, or who, whom. So essentially, how to ask questions. So first, let's review the relative pronoun, because the relative pronoun's declension is actually going to be really super important for understanding the interrogative pronoun, because they're very similar, like almost twins. So remember, the relative pronoun is used as an adjectival clause, or used in an adjectival clause, and it gives further information about its antecedent. And it translates as who or which in those various forms. So it can be who in the nominative, whose in the genitive, to or for whom in the dative, the accused will be whom, and the adverb will be from, by, with, and on whom, and of course just supplant who with which for each of those when you're talking about an object as opposed to a person. Now, the interrogative adjective is going to use the same exact forms as the relative pronoun. The only difference is going to be its function. So it's going to modify a noun in the sentence and ask a question rather than setting up a relative clause, which is a subclause that describes what it's modifying. So that's the big thing. So it translates like an interrogative. So which, what, or what kind of, and you can kind of pick and choose which of those translation makes the most sense given the context of the word that, the phrase that you're translating. So use the one that makes the most sense to you. So now let's take a look at some sentences. So first, quod signum videis. Quod signum videis. So first and foremost, where's the interrogative adjective? Quod. And what is quod modifying? Signum. So because they're both neuter, they're both singular, and they're both accusative in this instance. And we know they're accusative because videis is ending in s, which means you is the subject. And last I checked, you are not a sign. So quod signum videis would translate as what, which, or what kind of sign do you see? In English, we might more naturally say what sign did you see? Quem librum legis. Quem librum legis. Now again, quem is modifying librum here. It's our interrogative adjective modifying librum. Legis, of course, is going to be you, still the subject. So what or which or what kind of book are you reading? Now let's take a look at the last sentence. In qua urbe vivimus. In qua urbe vivimus. So here, qua is modifying urbe, and it's part of this ablative phrase. So in what kind of, or what, or which city are we living? So now let's take a look at how the pronoun is going to be slightly different than the adjective. So the pronoun is going to be used to ask a question seeking the identity of a person or an object. It is going to translate as who, what, which, whose, or whom. Now, unlike the adjective, it's not really going to be modifying anything in the sentence precisely, usually at least. Whereas the adjective is going to be normally modify something within the sentence that is actually physically present in it. So it's going to use the same forms, again, as the relative pronoun, except the nominative singular, and therefore the neuter accusative singular, is going to be different. It's quis, quis, and quid, and masculine, feminine, neuter, respectively, which means quid will also be the accusative singular for neuter. Because, of course, the neuter always repeats in the nominative, accusative, and vocative, right? So everything else otherwise, though, is the same. So now let's take a look at some examples of this. So quis es? Quis es? Who are you? Quid illud est? Quid illud est? What is that? Cuius liber est? Whose book is this? Quem Caesar liberavit? Whom did Caesar free? Cui argumentum dedit? To whom did he give the evidence? So here you can see an example of each of the cases in action and how it's being used. And notice it's replacing the person for the most part, or the thing that's being talked about, rather than actually modifying it. And of course, these are both different than the relative pronoun because the relative pronoun and clause are all going to be further describing a noun that is in the main idea of the sentence, right? So here we're asking questions. We're not describing something that is there, we're asking about it. So it's the difference between the girl who is sitting at the chair is Sally and what girl is sitting in the chair. You would use the same looking pronoun for both of those sentences, but the structure is dramatically different. One, the relative phrase, the girl who is sitting in the chair is Sally. Who is sitting in the chair is describing the girl, right? It's not asking who is sitting in the chair, the question, it's just describing, further pointing out who I'm talking about. Whereas what girl or who is sitting in the chair is a direct question, and that's the difference between the relative pronoun and clause versus the interrogative. It's just how it's used. Because in Latin, it's just like in English, they're very similar words. But that is it for this Acroasis. Make sure you fill in the Google form and take any questions that you have to class with you tomorrow. Wale te omnes.